All right, welcome back everyone to another episode of the Play on Demand Playbook. I'm Rusty,
And I'm Maddy Alcala.
and we're here in Riga, Latvia,
Yes.
exploring
We
this
are.
beautiful city.
We're calling in from a cave, it looks like.
We are indeed.
What did we find? Well, it's very cold outside, so we found something warm to
It
do
is.
this
It's
episode.
definitely cold
Yes.
outside, but what a great city this is.
Oh, it's beautiful. The architecture is amazing. For anyone who hasn't been to Riga, this is my first time. Yours as well.
Might as well.
Must visit. Lovely people, great food, beautiful architecture.
Recommend coming in the summer though.
Yes, February maybe was not
Was
the
that the best?
wisest choice. But we're here for a special reason, though. So
Yeah.
we've got Tech Chill that kicks off tomorrow. Just a big event here in Riga.
It is, and we also got to see some partners and visit with some partners. We were over at the
did?
Printful facility yesterday,
Yeah.
checking them out. We were at their headquarters and also went by Printify. So pretty neat. It's kind of like the home base for a lot of big print-on-demand players.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's we asked someone yesterday, kind of what are the biggest well-known companies in Riga outside of Printful and Printify, and they had to think about it for a second. It's kind of like going to Atlanta in the States, and everybody knows somebody that works at Coca-Cola
Coca-Cola,
or
yeah,
Delta
Delta.
Airlines. It's very similar here. So a lot of people that know the print-on-demand space, which is super cool.
Yeah, I'm glad we made the trip, and
Yeah.
I'm going to be heading down to go see some more partners down in Czech Republic, the Netherlands, and the UK. So we got a lot of facilities I'm going to be covering here pretty soon.
Yeah, they're going to get on a full road trip across Europe.
It is absolutely. It's cool though. I'm glad the Printful facility was interesting.
was.
Very clean facility.
You could eat off the floors in that facility. It was spotless. You can really tell how much effort that team has put into just a very immaculate operation. It's impressive.
It was. It wasn't the biggest facility we've seen,
Nope.
but it was very well run, very clean.
Very clean, close to the airport, obviously, strategic choice.
First thing you see when you fly in is
Yeah,
Printful.
I know. I like that. It's good brand placement. You get off the plane, you're like, here we go.
Home of Printful. Let's do it. Yeah.
Print-on-demand capital of the universe. But looks like they've got some room to expand too, though. They've got some room to grow into that building. And I know they've taken some time to find their home, and it seems like they found it, which is great.
Yeah. Well, I think it'll be put to the test as we, obviously as they continue to merge with Printify and all
Yeah.
that. Some of the conversations we were not able to have on this trip that we were hoping to have.
Yes.
They asked for a few months as they still kind of go through the mergers and put the two companies together.
Yep.
But we'll be bringing some more information out and we'll be talking with probably more likely Alex.
Yeah.
Once they're ready and they're able to share more. So.
Yes.
But that was my only disappointment for this year.
I know.
This trip is not really being able to share some of the conversations we had.
Yes. Well, it makes sense, though. I mean, they just announced the merger in November. It's only early February, so they still have a lot to figure out. But we've had some great conversations with the team.
Yeah.
Seems like everyone is excited. There's some uncertainty, of course, around the combination. But, the fact that they're in the same city, I think a lot of culture shared really makes it easier on those guys.
Absolutely. And they do come. We've talked about before, they complement each other. So we're
Yes.
interesting. I also think that there's, for anybody that's looking for staffing in
Oh,
the U.S.,
yeah.
what a gem of a place to come and find really talented staff
Yes.
at really, you can pick up at a really fair rate for what we would expect in the U.S. So and they know the culture, they know the U.S. culture, they understand print-on-demand industry, and they work a lot of times in the time zones.
Yeah, no, I think I've shared the same impression. Like a lot of awesome talent available, and so you get the benefit of the industry knowledge, kind of play the time zones a little bit. So I think there's some great people here. It would make some really good additions to a lot of the U.S. print-on-demand companies as well.
Yeah. That's why I sent back the notes to my kid. Yeah, we should really, we should pivot a little bit.
Taylor's going to open a POD office here in Latvia. That would be surprising.
I'd be open for it. I come back in the summertime.
Well, you and I will come back in the summer. We'll do
Yeah.
an episode then. Well, I'm curious, Rusty, what are some of the things we've heard about in the past couple of days that you think are interesting to share? Any topics, customers, or kind of what's going on in the industry? I think that's come up for you.
It still seems like DTF is playing a big role.
Yep.
Everybody's
true.
making those investments there.
Yep.
Enterprise clearly is
Yep.
where, and I know I'm a homer for talking about enterprise and corporate, but that's where I'm keying in on
Yeah.
what I'm seeing with that. But yeah, it's a lot of excitement still for what the technologies and how the corporate market is going to be able to support the overall industry and what that growth looks like in 2025.
Yeah, that's very, I've heard the same thing. I'm going to pick on the enterprise piece a little bit because I feel like you have a good perspective with Taylor. From what I know about Taylor, I mean, you guys service the enterprise all day. That's kind of your sweet spot. We've talked to some companies here who are trying to break into the enterprise a little bit more. Some questions around what does that mean? What are some of the segments? Kind of brainstorming a little bit about where there's opportunity. You mentioned corporate a lot. What are some things that you would share that you've learned as working with these big enterprise customers, like other businesses should keep in mind?
Yeah, well, that's where the technology stack is really going to solve a lot of these problems. We've got, it's still not all the way there, but with company store technologies that are continuing to improve, it's how do you report and measure back to the enterprise? Because you've got multiple stakeholders when you go engage with these type of companies. You've got procurement, you've got marketing, you've got finance, and you've got to be able to provide that value chain, all on that value chain. Hey, this is how we're able to score and provide the metrics that you need to be able to manage your part of the business and get that sign off. That's still the one area that we, as an industry, we have to really solve for.
Right.
The technology can do that. And we're talking about one of our partners who's looking at extracting data from the equipment globally to be able to measure back to like their marketing, the CMOs and the marketing team saying, hey, you're in compliance across, all your printed materials by this percentage and in real time. And that's a powerful metric that you're able to really provide. It may not close your deal, but it's going to help push it further along to get that person on board as they're coming in. And I do think that we're going to see in 2025, we talked about this a little bit at dinner last night, is we're going to see more and more companies in the RFP space that are going to, like the large end users that are like, hey, I need a larger percentage of my spend going POD versus the traditional print, hold, and store. And that's something that in the latter part of 2025, we're going to see, that's my forecast, and also in 2026, because we're already seeing it. We're already hearing and seeing some of the signs that's going to happen.
Yeah, no, I think I completely agree. And I've heard the same thing over the past couple of days. Someone mentioned that, even on like the sports and licensing side, there's some large contracts that are coming up for renewal. So I think that'll feed into the RFP space. And then I think what you said is interesting too about the different technology expectations. Whereas you take a small business, a Shopify merchant, in general, those customers are going to have much different expectations around data and reporting than a really large enterprise platform customer or a brand or a retailer. And just a different level of stakeholders, right? Within the SMB, you're typically selling or working with an owner operator. So their finance and marketing and merchandising and CEO all rolled into one person. So like usability is such an important thing. And obviously Printify, Printful, Guten, like a lot of the platforms in the POD space focus on that in many ways. Whereas within an enterprise, you have these distributed users and distributed consumers of what's happening in the POD value chain. And so completely agree. That's where something like that reporting and that data to keep everybody up to speed and really show the value of what you're doing becomes a lot more important.
So now it's my turn to flip it on you.
Please.
You run a technology company.
I do, yes.
So when it comes to technology, how do we solve for some of these challenges? And what are you seeing and what are you hearing from all your customers that are using Good and order mesh in your network?
I'm glad you asked that. I think, I just hit on it a little bit with this more small business customer, huge focus on UI, usability, speed, right? I want to be able to log in and do what I need to do quickly and efficiently, right? It's a lot more like a consumer mindset. I go to an app on my phone and I'm trying to get something done. I don't want to have to think about it, right? Or call a person necessarily. I just want it to be there, self-service, do what I need to do. So I think that's super important for the smaller customer. I think the more medium to larger size, mid-market or enterprise customer, they're going to look a lot more at connectivity. They typically have a much more robust technology or software stack. So, conversations on ERP integrations or data visualization tools and CRMs and email marketing, like being able to have a central source of truth for order data and the POD supply chain that talks to all of those other platforms, super important, right? Because that gives them the ability, like you mentioned, to have that consistency of data and reporting. And then I think that analytics suite reporting layer on top of everything to give insights, because typically those enterprise and mid-market customers, they're just doing a lot more volume, right? And so they're consistent volume, it's larger, right? It's a much bigger component in terms of just overall spend and reach. And so helping them sift through that data in a way that doesn't just say, here's what's happening, but here's the insights, here's the takeaways, I think is super important. So you've heard me even on this trip, like AI. So, looking at the LLMs and kind of the large models to say, here's what's happening with your data, visualize it, but then kind of take that next step around analytics and predictions and kind of helping draw connections between things, I think is super important.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, you mentioned AI, and that's something we've talked about, but we didn't really hear or see a lot of that in our conversations earlier this week.
That's true.
Tech Chill, I think that script's going to get flipped.
Yes. Well, I mean, I've already gotten requests from a bunch of these different CEOs of like, hey, I'm building this thing, let's meet and how we can partner. And, I think that we've talked about there's so many different applications and, that adoption curve of AI, everyone's in some ways, unless you're running an AI company, right, we're all kind of in the same boat of figuring out what that means organizationally, how do you apply it for internal efficiency, and then ultimately as a software business, of course, we look at how can we infuse that into our product and deliver value to customers. But yeah, it's the Wild West a little bit, which is fun. We'll see how it affects production. Printful, I asked their head of operations who gave us a tour. They're thinking about it. Everybody's thinking about it.
Yeah.
So that's another great opportunity for knowledge sharing. Hopefully we get some guests later this year that can give us some examples of how they're using it.
I thought there was a couple of things that when we were talking about with operations and just like automation too. I think if we think about AI as a lot of ways to influence not only from the design standpoint, but also how do you manage your equipment, your operations processes, maintenance, all that. But like robotics and some of those things I hadn't really thought about, and they brought up some good points on why there was that. How do you balance making those investments and not making the investments? And you got to look at what your cost of labor is in a certain market. Versus, and I didn't really think about it. When these things break and we're so thinking here, they're going to run all the time, but
I know
the maintenance and the cost sometimes to be able just to keep them operational is huge.
It is. One, I asked, the individual who gave us the tour yesterday at Printful, like, you have a problem with that thing or a problem with that machine? And he was like, of course we do, right? Like, there's always problems, right? And, there's always something that goes wrong, and they have to think about support and engineering and R&D, obviously support from the equipment suppliers as well. But I think you asked the question of like, hey, how you thought about robotics and kind of infusing some of that technology? And he's like, we have a great labor market and we don't have a talent staffing problem. And, people don't have a faulty part. We all get sick, of course, but, it's a different type of employee care versus you've got robots that are falling apart. And it's just one more thing to maintain. But I thought it was an interesting point because, it's very much regional of like, he was saying, look here, Latvia, we have a lot of really good talent, might be more relevant in different parts of the US market. But it was kind of the same thing where I asked about sewing. Printful has, cut and sew and sublimation.
Quite a bit, actually, a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, quite a bit. And, they're not the only player that I've asked this question to. Is seamstresses is not necessarily a top growing career path, especially for much of the younger generation. So I think that's going to continue to pressure companies all over the place. Because the only business I've talked to recently that's not struggling with sewing talent was one located in China, actually. Which doesn't surprise you.
100%.
So I think we'll have to see how that market, everything we're going with tariffs and all that, how that cross-border trade and flow of goods impacts things. Because talk about the Wild West, it's another question we're all asking ourselves these days.
Yeah, we brought up actually tariffs.
Yes.
So I think we'd be remiss if we did not at least
topic of the week.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And obviously it's changing very
daily.
Rapidly.
Yes.
Now they're off for Canada and Mexico, which I think gave at least for 30 days gave everybody a little bit of a pause. Especially in the promotional products part of our industry. They were really freaking out.
Totally. Yeah. Well, I asked you the other day at dinner. I said, "What do you think?" And you're like, Taylor's got a group of people that are looking at this, right? And I imagine it's for the larger businesses out there, you have experts. But we're all watching the news cycles and kind of all getting information at the same time about what's happening. So definitely we'll have impacts at least to productivity, if nothing else, because we're all running around trying to figure out what's going on.
Because they did say you did keep the ones from China in place.
Yes,
it's like 10%.
Yes,
for right now. And haven't had a chance to dive into all the different products that it is impacting with our space. But I do think that's going to be something to watch.
Yes.
And also keep an eye on, because who knows, this 30 days may turn into one day.
Uncertainty is the name of the game.
Nobody knows. But it's something that I think for our industry, we all need to be cautious about and continue to look for.
Yes.
One thing I want to ask before we wrap up was, what were some of the things that you saw or things so far on this trip that you're like, okay, that's interesting, I haven't really thought about, or I didn't expect that?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Or happy surprises.
Some happy surprises. I'll give you both. So I'll give you happy, and then I'll give you some things that give me a little bit of I want to think about this more. We had an interesting conversation over coffee about kind of the impact of the search algorithm changes that some businesses are seeing. We'd experienced that, you know, Guten, really more in Q4. We had a couple of big customers who were impacted by changes in Facebook and other advertising platforms. So that was something I heard from a partner this week, that it really is impacting their strategy, where they go, customer acquisition costs. And then, you know, if you're a platform where you support sellers, you kind of get hit on both sides, right? Because it impacts your business's customer acquisition and your customer's customer acquisition. So that was something I was like, okay, I want to dig more into this and really understand what that looks like from a market trend perspective, and ask a couple more people of like, how's this impacted you? So that was a note for later. I think happy surprise was just, you know, I continue to be really impressed by the appetite for partnerships in this industry. We joked, obviously Rod and Guten, you know, in many ways we're competitive to Printful, Printify. It's so funny because we have conversations with them and it's like, okay, you know, we compete in this part of the market, but how can we partner in other places, right? And it's just so common in our market, especially for people who I think really believe in the opportunity. And I asked you a question too, that you have a similar thing with many of your competitors who also can be collaborators, and you know, you kind of respect confidentiality in one part of your business and then say, let's focus on this. So
100%.
happy surprise.
I look at a competitor as just a partner that you have not found a way to work with yet.
Yeah.
And if you approach it that way, and I think as an industry, we really need to take that to heart.
Yes.
Is we're at an inflection point right now, and where the industry is growing and evolving. We have the ability to shape it the way that we feel like it's beneficial for all.
Yeah.
And if we do it, and we do it collaboratively, openly, it's great. There's always going to be a couple of those players, and we just
Don't have the same
not gonna
mindset.
fight, and that's okay.
Yep, that's okay.
We're okay with that.
Yep.
But for the most part, we can help craft how the industry operates. We can either be competitive, or we can be open and share resources and all that. And to me, I definitely take that approach, because that's how we build it the right way. Long term, it's healthier. And I did laugh about that too, because everybody was like, oh yeah, we're going to find a way to work together. You know, and that's, to me, puts a smile on my face, because that's what it's all about.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's great from a human perspective, but, you know, if you just go back to the commercial side of it, Brian, CEO Guten, forwarded me something, it was 2 days ago, actually. And we get, I'm sure you do too, we get like market coverage and banker books and stuff sent to us all the time. And it's always interesting to see how people outside of the industry cover our industry. So we always read it and kind of like, oh, we got that right. And I don't know where you got those stats. But they had an interesting table where it was showing how print on demand is one of the fastest growing segments in e-commerce. I'll send this to you, so I find it interesting. But
holding out on me.
Yeah, I mean, like, and we've gotten this recent market report that came out saying our industry is expected to reach, it was like $39 billion in the next couple of years. It's like, you know, we're at 6 right now. So I think that hints on a lot of what you're saying. It's not just, it feels good to work with people. It really, I think, does open up new market opportunity, because there's so much business here to be won. And I think within our, you know, print on demand, there's still a lot of education that needs to happen. And so, you know, each company individually, it's a huge effort to go out and teach a market about something. But if we're able to do that as a group, and approach things thoughtfully, we can knowledge share in a way that benefits everyone. So, you know, someone asked me yesterday, well, what do you think about fashion? What do you think about this industry and sports? And it's like, I've got a perspective, they've got a perspective, you've got a perspective. Okay, we probably just saved ourselves weeks of time on some of that research. And then they can go at it from their angle, we'll go at it from ours. Plenty of money to be made in the sandbox.
Big ass sandbox.
It's a big market. So
it's huge.
Yes,
and
lots
it's
of opportunity.
growing. It keeps getting bigger.
Keeps getting bigger.
Which is exciting.
It's very exciting. So, yes.
Well, I like the cave.
I think we might. I'm a big Riga fan. I think this might be our new office.
I like it.
We'll give the viewers some interesting backgrounds here. We just had, you know, high volume apparel printers in the background at Long Beach, and now we're in, you know, subterranean restaurant in Riga in the middle of winter, and got a couple other pretty fun venues coming up.
Yeah, definitely. And so anyways, thanks for being a part of this journey. I'm glad we made this trip. It's going to be a lot more fun as we cover more of these different outfits out there in the industry.
Yeah, a lot to say, a lot to do. Thanks for the time.
All right. So long.